Yogishadya sumanasakha sattvarthanamupakkrame yam natva kritakritya sihudam nama vikajananam parthaya pratibodhitam bhagavata narayana swayam vyasena gratitam puranamunina madhye mahabharatam Advaita amritavarshiniim bhagavatim ashtadashaadhyayinim ambattvamanusam dadami Bhagavad Gita bhavatveshiniim mukam karoti vachalam panghum langhayate girim yatkripa tamaham vande paramanandamadavam sadashiva samarambham shankaracharya madhyamam asmadacharya padyantam vande guru paramparam Yoginam Vishwanathakyam Asmattata Swarupinam Atmalabhat Param Labham Vaktaaram Nakadachanam Gita Granthakartaram Sri Gurum Pranamamyaham Yontah Pravishyamevacham Dhritim Buddhim Prachodayat Om Namah Sababhyas Sabapatibhyascha Vo Namaham Om Friends, we are now in the 15th session of the Gita Regimen for Advatic Living. Last time we finished the second chapter, so we are going to begin the third chapter today. But just to recall, in the second chapter he taught us about the details of Karma Yoga, and also in the last 18 shlokas he told us about the Sthita Prajna, that is almost a Brahmajnani. That shlokas from 255 to 272, there was a beautiful description, a great level description, high level description of a Sthita Prajna. And there are therefore two kinds of trend that have been introduced in the second chapter. One is the trend of Karma Yoga. Do your duty without attachment to the fruits thereof, and whatever the consequences, you are always bound to do your duty. The second trend was the Nivritti Marga. So throughout Vedanta there are two kinds, Pravritti Marga and Nivritti Marga, going as a contrast all the time. Pravritti is action, Nivritti is abstention from action. So the Pravritti Marga is the Karma Yoga. The Nivritti Marga is a kind of renunciation which is talked about in the shlokas. Dukheshvam uddiknamanana sukeshu vigatas pragaha vitaragavaya krodaham stitadir munirichyate. You see, atmanyeva atmana tushtaha stita prajnastadochite. He who is always reveling in his own atman, in his self, and he is totally content with his self, and he is completely devoid of any raga, bhaya and krodha, any attachment, any fear, any anger. Such a person is called Sthita Prajna, he said. And therefore one is supposed to do his actions without raga and dvesha, and such person is called Sthita Prajna. This has been described in the last few shlokas, 18 shlokas of the second chapter. And on the way, Krishna uses a characteristic expression, a very important expression, Yukta Asita Matparaha. At one point he says, Tasmat Yuddhasva Bharata. Therefore, O Arjuna, go and fight. You have to do your duty, go and fight. And at this point he says, Yukta Asita Matparaha. Sit down, thinking about me, having me as the last surrender, last refuge, be in union with the self, that yuktaha asita matparaha, in shloka 61 of the second chapter. Arjuna is naturally a little perplexed by these two directions of advice for him. One is to go and fight, Another is yukta asita matparaha, sit quietly in keeping me as your surrender and be in union with the self. And therefore he starts asking this question at the beginning of the 3rd chapter. In fact, here begins a complete discussion, the discussion of the Gita between God and man, about the prakriti and the nivritti, about how to do one's duty, about how to ultimately renounce, and what is the ultimate source of moksha, salvation. So all this starts right here, and question and answer, question and discussion. You will see the flow of thoughts. If you know enough of Sanskrit, read through the whole thing from the beginning to end in one go, you can see the flow of thoughts. Even if you cannot understand Sanskrit, if you take an English translation, shloka by shloka, not the large commentaries, just shloka alone, take the translation of the shlokas, read it in English from beginning to end, you can see the flow of thoughts. So here comes the question of Arjuna. Arjuna Uvacha, 3rd chapter, shloka number 1. Jayasi chet karmanaste mata buddhir janardana tatkim karmani ghore mam niyojayasi keshavam vyamishreneva vakyena buddhim mohayasiva me tadekam vadanishchitya yena shreyogamapniyam. I have read 2 shlokas in the 3rd chapter, shloka number 1 and 2, both are Arjuna's speaking. Jayasi chet karmanaha mata buddhihi. Buddhi is intellect, intelligence. Karmanaha, other than karma, other than action. So the contrast is between action and intellectual activity. By intellectual activity here, one refers to the renunciation that goes with that intellectual activity. If intellectual activity represented by renunciation is better, simply sitting quiet and sitting in meditation, yukta asita matparaha, if that is better than karma, karmanaha buddhihi jayasi mata chet. Karmanaha buddhihi jayasi mata chet. Jayasi means better, greater, superior. So jayasi chet karmanaha mata buddhihi. If you think that buddhi refers to the intellectual activity involved in yukta asita matparaha, that kind of thing, and all the associated renunciation described in the last 18 shlokas of the 2nd chapter. If that is better than karma, action, if that is what your feeling is, O Krishna, then kim ghore karmani mam niyojayasi. O Keshava, kim ghore karmani mam niyojayasi. Why are you prodding me on, propelling me on to go and fight? Tasmat yudhyasva bharata. He has said it more than once in the 2nd chapter. Tasmat yudhyasva bharata. Uttishta, rise up, Arjuna, go and fight. Sat kim karmani ghore mam. Why are you prodding me on to this brutal action? If intellectual activity is better than karma, that is, the buddhi is better than karma, that is, sitting quietly in meditation and renouncing everything else, if that is better than karma, so the problem is between pravritti and nivritti, between involvement in action and desisting from action. Vyamishreneva vakyena. So Arjuna is rather very polite. He is saying Vyamishrena iva vakyena. You are as if you are confusing me. Vyamishrena iva vakyena. You are confusing thoughts by buddhim mohayasi me. You are confusing my intellect. It looks as if. You see, he does not want to accuse Krishna directly, saying, no, you are talking in a contradictory way. No, he doesn't want to say that. He says, you are confusing me. It looks as if you are confusing me. Vyamishrena iva vakyena buddhim mohayasi iva me. You are appearing as if you are confusing me. Therefore, ekam vada nishchitya. Please tell me one thing. Ekam vada nishchitya yena shreyoham apriyam. By which, tell me that one thing, by which shreyaha aham apriyam. I will obtain the greatest good. Remember, the word shreyaha is a very good, very important word. He used it in the second chapter, that 7th shloka, where he said, tell me, Krishna, what is great shreyas for me. He surrendered to Krishna at that point. Karpanya doshopahata svabhavaha vrachami tvam dharmasammuda chetaha yachreyasyan nishchitam bruhi tanme. What is shreyas for me? What is the greatest good for me? Tell me clearly, he said there. And that is where he made a surrender. Shishyasteham shadhimam tvam prapannam. I surrender to you. I am your disciple. Tell me. And that is where Krishna started talking really the Vedanta discourse. So then, that Shreyaha, how do I obtain it? Do not confuse me. Ekam vada nishchitya. Please tell me one thing. So Arjuna's question is very relevant. And the Bhagavan answers, Shri Bhagavan uvacha, shloka number 3. Lokesmin dvividha nishtha pura prokta mayanagam jnana yogena sankhyanam karma yogena yoginam. A beautiful shloka which has to be understood very carefully, because Krishna has lays the foundation for the entire Gita by starting from this shloka in an elementary way. I have given long ago, pura means once upon a time, pura prokta maya, I have said this long ago. What have I said? Loke asmin dvivida nishta prokta. Asmin loke, in this world, dvivida nishta, there are two kinds of nishtha. Prokta, dvivida nishta. He doesn't use the plural. He says there are two, it is twofold, he says. Nishtha is twofold, dvividha. Dvividha nishtha prokta. What is nishtha? Nishtha is steadiness in regimen. Remember, we are talking about Gita regimen for Advaitic living. Krishna is telling Arjuna what is the regimen for proper living. Right? Of course, that is Advaita. That is what we are going to conclude in due time. So, Dvividha Nishta Pura Prokta. I have told the twofold regimen. One for Sankhyas, the philosophers. Sankhya means philosophy. The Sankhya is the name of the school of thought introduced by Kapila in earlier times, at the time of the Gita and before. Sankhya was known to be Kapila's Sankhya philosophy. But in Gita here, Krishna uses Sankhya for philosophy proper, philosophy, absolute philosophy. So, philosophers, those who are intent on philosophy, Sankhyanam, Jnana Yogena, by the path of Jnana. Karma Yogena Yoginam, for the yogis, for the Karma yogis. What do you mean Karma yogi? The people who are interested in action, who are enthralled by action, who cannot but do action only, who are not eligible for intellectual assent. So, for them, Karma Yoga. So, the Sankhyas, the philosophers, Jnana Yoga, the yogis, Karma yogis, the yogis, action-oriented people, Karma Yoga. What is Jnana Yoga and what is Karma Yoga? These are two nishtha, that is Jnana nishtha and Karma nishtha. Jnana nishtha is steadiness in action, steadiness in the regimen of intellectual activity, and karma yoga, karma nishtha is the steadiness in the regimen of doing action. Krishna is not saying that you can use either or this or that. Krishna says there are types of people who can do the only the jnana nishtha. There are types of people who can be eligible only for karma nishtha. Actually, by looking at the world of activity, as we know, 99% of people are eligible only for karma nishtha, that is doing action. Doing action is preliminary, is a prerequisite to ultimately reach that stage of jnana nishtha. That jnana nishtha, that jnana yoga is only for the ultimate philosophers who have reached the stage after doing for a long time the karma yoga in the Gita way. Karma yoga, what is the Gita way? The Gita way is the way given in the second chapter. You see, कर्मण्येव अधिकारस्ते मा फलेषु कदाचन मा कर्म फलहेतुर्भूः मा ते संगोऽस्त्व कर्मणि अकर्मणे संगः मा अस्तु. Do not be attached to inaction. Do not be attached to the fruits of action. You see, so these are the two major rules of regimen for karma yoga. This is what is prescribed for the large majority of people. So Loke, he has given us twofold paths to regimen, and one for one type of people, the other for the other type of people, not a choice for the same person between the two, no. And, because see, he wants to dispel certain confusions which might arise in the minds of the listeners or the readers. So in shloka number 4, na karmanam anarambhati naishkarbyam purushosnute na cha sanyasana deva siddhim samadigacchati. Na karmanam anarambhat naishkarmyam purushosnute. You see, the pravritti and nivritti. Pravritti is involvement in action. Nivritti is renunciation from action. That is stoppage of desisting from action, abstention from action. So these are the two things. In the second chapter, he has said that yukta asita matparaha, and various other places also he has said that tasya prajna pratishtita. You see, yasyam jagdati bhutani sa bhutani sa pashyato munehe. When everybody else is sleeping, that is when the Sthita Prajna is active. Ya nisha sarva bhutanam satyam jagrati samyami. When everybody is supposed to be awake, that is night. That is not action. So it is a kind of actionlessness ascribed to the Sthita Prajna. This actionlessness is going to be explained in the further chapters in the Gita. So here he introduces that by a crucial word. Remember, these shlokas, first 8 shlokas that we are going to do today, these 8 shlokas introduce 3 key, technical key words for Vedanta. One is Naishkarmyam, this shloka, in shloka number 4. Na karmanam anarambhate naishkarmyam purushosnute. Karmanam anarambhat. Karma, action, anarambhat, not beginning an action. If you see, Arjuna was saying, allow, chordo, leave me, let me go back and take sannyasa, take a begging bowl, I will throw down my arms, I will not fight, I will go away, I will not do this action of fighting. So he says, na karmanam anarambhat, by not starting an action. Arambha is action, anarambha is the opposite of action. Na karmanam anarambhat, by not starting an action, it does not mean that you have reached the stage of Naishkarmya. What is Naishkarmya? Karmya is action full. fullness. Naishkarmya is actionlessness. Actionless, the noun for that is actionlessness. Naishkarmya. That stage, that is the stage of a Brahmajnani. That is the, I have told you the story of Jadabharata in some other context. So that is the state of Naishkarmya, no action. Even if you are doing action, it doesn't bother him. It does not affect him. It is only body, mind, intellect, action. So that stage of Naishkarmya does not come by just abstaining from action. Nacha sannyasana, just by leaving, sannyasana means renunciation, by just renouncing action like this, siddhim samadhi gacchati, na siddhim samadhi gacchati. One cannot reach the destination or the goal of life. Karmanam anarambhate, not starting action, that does not mean it is naishkarmya. Naishkarmya is an important word, actionlessness. He uses it only at two places, but he talks about it throughout the Gita. Nacha sannyasana deva, by just throwing away the actions, by physical renunciation, siddhim samadhi gacchati, na samadhi gacchati. The goal of life will not be reached, because you think that you can throw away all action by just not acting and sitting quiet. By sitting quiet is not non-action, because the mind is active. Sitting quiet, it is very difficult to restrain the mind from thinking about something. You see, that is what Arjuna will do. Arjuna will go to the forest, sit quietly, but think about Draupadi and Duryodhana and all the wrongs that Duryodhana and his gang made to Draupadi and himself. So, the fifth shloka emphasizes this. Nahi kaschit kshanamapi jatu tishtatya karma krite karyate hyavasha karma sarva prakriti jair gunai. Kaschit kshanamapi, kaschite means anybody, na kshanamapi, even for a moment, kshanamapi, even for a moment, akarma kriti tishtati, does not stand, na tishtati, cannot stand, does not stand by not doing action. Even for a moment you cannot desist from action. The very mind which is thinking, that is action. Even if you say that your mind is not thinking, you are breathing, you are living, you are doing so many things. You see, sitting, nahi kaschit kshanamapi jatu tishtati akarma kriti. Without doing action, akarma kriti. Karma kriti means one who does action. Akarma kriti, one who does not do any action. Kshanamapi, even for a moment, you cannot ascribe to yourself the state of not doing any action. Karyate hyavasha karma. Everybody, sarvaha, everybody, all of us, avashaha, without even knowing it. You see, we are not in our control. Karyate karma. All the time we are doing action. By what? Prakriti jair gunai. By our guna, sattva, rajas, tamas. The three gunas are almost all of them are ingrained in us. They are ingrained in a mixed way. Can you show the chart now? The prakriti on the desktop chart. He uses the word prakriti now. This prakriti is a very important technical word for which I will show you a chart. I will get back to this chart several times in the course of the Gita, but this is the first time he uses the word prakriti, so I am introducing the chart for you. Excuse me. You got the chart? So as you can see in the chart, okay, As you can see in the chart, there is Brahman at the top, and from Brahman there are two kinds of prakriti shown. Prakriti, para prakriti and apara prakriti. We will talk about these things in more elaboration when we come to the 7th chapter. In the 7th chapter, 4th and 5th shlokas, we are going to talk about a complete elaboration of it. Right now, I want to tell you that this prakriti, which is used here, its meaning is nature. This prakriti comes from the absolute reality, Brahman. But there are two kinds of prakriti coming from Brahman. One is called para prakriti, the supreme prakriti. Actually, prakriti is going to be equated to Shakti, the potential of the Lord, of the Absolute, at one point of our discussion. So that is para Shakti. The other one is apara Shakti. The apara Shakti, which you see on the right side of the chart, that is the apara Shakti. That is the source of all material universe. Everything that is matter. The word matter in English goes back to the word apara prakriti in Vedanta. Apara prakriti is the source of all material universe. And all the details which are there in that chart are not relevant today in this particular shloka. But what you have to realize is that apara prakriti is the source, the origination of all matter. Everything that is matter, including our mind, our body, mind, intellect, everything is matter. All that is matter, all that is chemistry, and all that is physics, they come from that prakriti. But here in this shloka, even that prakriti is not fully referred. It is only an iota of that prakriti is referred. Because, you see, we have taken, so let us come back. Hereafter we don't need the chart. Let us come back now to the meaning of the prakriti here. Prakriti is the source of all matter, I said. Actually, in the past, in the millions of births, lives that each one of us had gone through, we had done many actions. We had thought of many thoughts. We had had many thoughts and actions. All these thoughts and actions leave a vasana in our mind. This mind travels with the body to our next janma. Before I continue this, I will tell you about this vasana. Vasana is a tendency. You see, we know what is merit and what is demerit, what is punya, what is papa. We may or may not know, but we have some vague idea of what is merit, what is demerit, what is punya, what is papa. And we are told that by doing proper prayaschitta karma, atonement, rituals of atonement, we can throw away all the past sins that we might have committed. In fact, the dip in the waters of the Ganges is supposed to do a great good to us by ridding us of all sins. Whether you believe it or not, keep that now. We are not interested in that, we are not going to discuss that now. But even supposing that all our sins are removed by a dip in the Ganges, think of a person who has gone to the Benares and has done a lot of rituals for 2 days, 3 days, and whatever the priest says. Oh, he goes through a lot of regimen, ritual regimen. And finally, at the last moment, the priest says, at last, you have finished everything, you have done great things, you have done all the rituals, you are rid of all the sins, now you can go and relax. And our friend, you know what he does? Okay, I will go and have a smoke. the point here is, the smoking is a habit, is a vasana. The Ganges, if it rids him of all sins, it may have gotten rid of all his sins, but it cannot get rid of his vasana, his tendency. It is that tendency which makes him say, let me go and have a smoke. So, vasana, you see, punanti papam tulanti vasana. That is the Narayaniyam shloka there, which says that the papas, the sins are eradicated, but not the vasanas. The vasanas will not be eradicated. The vasanas, the tendencies that we have acquired through our actions, through our thoughts, millions of them in all our previous lives and also in this life up to the present time, these vasanas can be eradicated only by taking the name of the Lord, Hari, Narayana, Rama, Krishna, or the Lord, whatever the Lord's name may be. So, that we will talk about it when we come to the Bhakti Yoga. The point is, the vasanas will not be eradicated so easily. So what happens? It is the vasana that makes you think of certain things, and it is the thought that just thus arises. It is the thought that makes you do an action. Vasana, thought, action. The great Swami Chinmayananda has talked about this very effectively in all his lectures. Vasana, thought, action is a chain. It is the vasana, thought, action that exhibits itself in your next birth with all your tendencies. In the same house, in the same family, we see children, which one child has a certain tendency, another child has a different tendency. All this because of the vasanas that child has brought from its previous births. So, vasanas make you, the earlier vasanas give you a certain, that follow you. So this expression of the earlier vasanas in this janma, that is called the prakriti, individual prakriti. What I told you earlier is cosmic prakriti. What is cosmic prakriti? From Brahman, prakriti, parashakti, which is the Lord himself, the personal God, and the aparashakti, the source of all material universe. That is the prakriti. But from that prakriti, a small fragment is our own individual prakriti, vasana prakriti. That is the prakriti that we carry from our previous vasana thought actions. Vasana thought action. The prakriti for the next janma. Vasana thought action. It goes on like that. So, my prakriti, my individual prakriti may be different, certainly will be different from your individual prakriti or another man's individual prakriti and so on. Each one has an individual prakriti. So, that prakriti jair gunai, that prakriti gives rise to your combination, your conglomeration of the gunas, sattva, rajas, tamas. In what proportion you have the sattva, rajas, tamas, for each kind of action, what kind of tendencies you are bringing forth from your previous past, that is your prakriti. From that prakriti, your gunas, because of that you are doing your action. You will always be doing that kind of action without knowing it. Avashaha. Avashaha means they are not in your control. You are in its control. So that is the shloka 5. It's a very important shloka. It introduces the word prakriti here, and it says that nobody can desist from action even for a single moment, because his mind is thinking and his own prakriti is directing him to think of various ways. Each man may have his own way of thinking, so his prakriti is different from another man's prakriti. Therefore, nahi kaschit kshanamapi jatu tishtatya karma kriti karyate hyavasha karma sarva prakriti jair gunai. And we go to shloka 6. Karmendriyani samyamya yaste manasa smaran Indriyartham vimudhatma mityacharasa uchyate. Indriya are the senses. Indriyartha are the sense objects. Senses are in us. We have the karmendriyas, we have the jnanendriyas. Karmendriyas are vakpanipada, etc. That is speech, hands and the legs and the two exiting organs. So karma pancha, there are 5 karmendriyas. Jnanendriyas are the senses of cognition. These are shotram, chakshus, sparsha, dhrana evacha. The ears, the nose, the tongue, right, and the eyes and the skin, touch. So they are the jnanendriyas. So jnanendriyas are 5, karmendriyas are 5. But jnanendriyas receive sense information from outside. Karmendriyas act. So karmendriya, the organs of action. If one controls the karmendriya, but thinks with his mind, remember mind is behind the 10 indriyas. Mind is behind the 10 indriyas. Of course the mind monitors them, so to say. Mind directs them. So by one who has restricted the actions of the karmendriyas, but thinking in his mind of all the sense objects everywhere, that is only a false ethics, mithyachara, almost a hypocrite. Karmendriyani samyamya, one who has controlled all the karmendriyas, all the organs of action, manasa smaranne aste, but he is sitting there, sitting quietly, but thinking by his mind about all the sense objects. Indriyarthan, vimudhatma, this foolish person, he is only a mithyachara. Mithyachara means hypocrite, according to a traditional meaning. I mean, though Aurobindo in his commentary does not want to use that word, hypocrite, he says it is a false ethics, that kind of thing. So karmendriyani samyamya yaste manasasmaran indriyarthan vimudhatma mithyacharasya uchyate. In contrast, on the other hand, yastvindriyani manasa niyamyarabhate Arjuna karmendriyai karmayogam asaktasya visheshyate. On the other hand, yaha indriyani manasa niyamya. You see, it is the mind that was thinking about the sense objects. Suppose you have controlled the mind. Indriyani manasaniyamya, controlling the tendencies of the mind, the directions of the mind by the mind, indriyani. So all the indriyas are controlled by the mind. Karmendriyai karmayogam arabhate. One begins karma yoga. What is karma yoga? All that was said in the 2nd chapter. Right? Karmanyeva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phalage tobbu ma te sangostu karmani yogastha kuru karmani. Be in yoga, do all your obligatory duties. So karma yogam, one who does by karmendriya. Of course, one has to do the karma yoga, one has to do the action with the karmendriya, pancha, the 5 organs of action. One who does it, having controlled the senses by the mind, but still acts with the same sense organs, the way karma yoga has been mentioned in the 2nd chapter, that person is called asaktaha, unattached, non-attached. You see, in the key shloka of 247, we said, Mate yogastha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya. Sangam tyaktva, attachment, leave the association. So, unattached, that unattached is defined here. You have to, all the indriyas must be in your control. Do only those obligatory actions which you are prescribed to do. Do them in the way Gita has prescribed. earlier in the second chapter. Karmendriya buddhi yoga, as it is called. Karmendriya karma yogam. Such a person is asaktaha. He is the unattached person. Therefore, niyatam kuru karmatvam karmajyayosya karmanaham. You see, all the time we were wondering what has Gita got to say about our daily activities. Here you are being told in a slow motion way, step by step what you do. Therefore do niyatam kuru karmatvam. Therefore do your prescribed niyatam karma kuru. Niyatam karma, prescribed actions. Do the prescribed actions. Karmajyayosya karmanah. Shloka number 8. Karmajyayosya karmanah. Action is better than inaction. Karma is better than akarma. Karma is action, akarma is inaction. Even Sharira Yatra, just by you have to carry on the journey of life. Sharira Yatra, journey of life, even that na prasiddhyet akarmana. If you desist from action, if you abstain from action, you cannot do the journey of life. The journey of life means eating, living, standing, going hither, there, everywhere. So Sharira Yatra apichate na prasiddhyet akarmana. And therefore, sir, it is all right, you are in one stroke, in one breath, you are saying, do your actions. In the other breath, you are saying, control all your indriyas. How is all this possible? What is the meaning of control of the indriyas? What is the meaning of do all the prescribed actions in the Karma Yoga, in the Gita way? What is that? That is why the next shloka says, Krishna introduces a beautiful word, a tremendously important word, namely yajna. Yajna arthat karmanonyatra lokoyam karma bandhanah tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sanga samachara. Number 9. It must be highlighted. It is a important shloka, 5-star shloka. Yajna arthat karmana anyatra. Do every action for as a yajna. I will tell you what is yajna. Do every action as a yajna, for the purpose of yajna. Anything done other than the purpose of yajna is a bondage. This is the first line. Yajna arthat karmanaha anyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha. In this world, any action, karmanaha, yajnarthad anyatra, other than karmanaha, that is the action which is done for anything, any purpose other than yajna. Yajnarthad anyatra karmanaha, lokaha ayam karma bandhanaha. It will be a bondage in this sloka. Bondage. It will bind you back to samsara again and again, birth and death, life and again and again you have to come back. Therefore, tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sangas samachara. Therefore, Arjuna, all your actions, do it mukta sangaha, without attachment, having renounced your attachment. Mukta sangaha. Mukta means released. Sangha is attachment. Samachara. Do your actions, do it efficiently. Samachara. So do your actions efficiently. So now what is this yajna? Yajna means Vishnu. Yajna means sacrifice. Whoever is here, we are trying to tell you what is the English translation of yajna, but it is an untranslatable word, because yajna has so many connotations. But sacrifice is one connotation. What is sacrifice? Tyaga. Renounce. Sacrifice. Whoever originally, first person who translated yajna as sacrifice, hats off to that person. I think it must be Max Muller or somebody in the 18th century. When they first came across the Gita, in Sanskrit and wanted to translate it to either German or English. Sacrifice. So there is some element of, it is good, it is right, it's correct. That is, there is an element of sacrifice in yajna. Yajna means anything which is done not for a selfish purpose, unselfishly, dedicated to a noble cause, noble purpose, noble person, not having any selfish motive, that is called yajna. Yajna means Vishnu, I told you. Yajna is sacrifice, that is one meaning. Yajna, this action which I am telling you as a dedicated, unselfish action, is the modern way in which all the modern philosophers have come into it. So that is yajna. We shall dwell on this yajna word very elaborately in the next 8 shlokas, from shloka number 9 to shloka number 16, which we will take up in the next session. But right now, for this yajna, that is this kind of thing, this is how you are supposed to do all your actions. This is the sum and substance of the first 8 shlokas. You cannot desist from action even for a single moment. And there are, the Jnana Yoga is only for the Sankhyas and the Karma Yoga is only for the Yogis. That is those who are oriented towards action, most of us. The very few people are oriented intellectually. You see, therefore Jnana Yoga is for the very small percentage of highly evolved people. The yogis are the seekers who want to do things and achieve the goal. So they are the yogis. For them the Karma Yoga. But Karma Yoga means not by, so therefore do not desist from action. By desisting from action, you have not reached that ultimate stage of sannyasa. The ultimate stage of sannyasa is rather difficult to reach. The Karma Yoga is the path, is the means to reach that stage. Therefore you have to control the senses but still doing the action. This is the shloka number 6 and 7. Therefore do the prescribed actions, do them for yajna. This is the content of the first 9 shlokas. We will take it up from the 10th shloka, 9th shloka onwards again. There is more to say on the shloka number 9. So shloka number 9 and onwards we will take it up in the next session. Swasti prajabhya paripalayantam nyayena margena mahim mahisha go brahmanebhya shubhamastu nityam lokas samastas sukhino bhavantu.